Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Chimera's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. Okay, so spoiler season races on. You see what I did there? Because of Aetherdrift and racing and no? Okay. All right. Anyways, let's go to the spoilers. Some really exciting ones, including the return of a beloved character, Count on Luck. This is not the card that I'm talking about. Loot is maybe not the most beloved character in Magic. We'll get to the beloved character later, okay? An enchantment for red. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Prosper fans out there, write this one down. Very simple, very effective. Yeah, it's just a very solid card. We already have kind of this effect on some other cards, but typically, they are at a slightly higher mana value, but they give you like a benefit if you don't use the card, or they give you another option. Think of, what's the Siege one? There's a Siege that does it essentially. There's also that other one that's like, hey, if you don't do it, you get a Power Stone or whatnot, okay? This one is, no, let's just simplify it. At 3 mana, we are giving you additional card advantage, or temporary card advantage, I should say, on every single one of your turns. Kind of like the, red Phyrexian Arena in a way, essentially. No downside when it comes to losing life, unlike that one, but downside in that, I could just lose on that card permanently if it's like, that's a lovely card and I love it, but I don't have the mana up for that, unfortunately, because that card costs 7 or whatever, and I only have 4 mana. So yeah, you could end up losing some of your best cards maybe earlier on, but later on, yeah, this is just gravy. I mean, it's just gravy in general. And again, keep in mind, it does say play, not cast, which is much better because that allows you to play lands off the top, which is huge. So yeah, a very good card draw engine. Also, if you are like me and maybe have a deck built around, devotion to red, yeah, this can be very good in that too. Moving on. Cloudspire Coordinator. Point that way. Coordinate. 3/1 human pilot for 2 mana in Boros. When this creature enters, scry 2. That's nice. Tap, create X 1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens, where X is the number of mounts and or vehicles that enter the battlefield under control this turn. Those tokens have this token saddles, mounts, and cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So I immediately was going to be like, well, this goes infinite with the Intruder Alarm. It does, but you need to have a vehicle or mount enter the battlefield. So there you go. But basically, this is a way to say, hey, you know what? If I have a mount tribal or vehicle tribal or a combination of both tribal deck, all of a sudden I can have a just good supply of, pilots to pilot those things. This is going to be more so, again, it's interesting that it's like X. So it's like if you play a lot of mounts or a lot of vehicles in the same turn, you can actually get a lot of pilots out. Keep in mind as well that if you happen to have like any like mass blink effects as well, and you have like a lot of mounts or, vehicles that are crewed already, then yeah, you can just blink those, they come into play, you tap this, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I blink my entire team, and all of a sudden I have 6 vehicles coming into play. Cool, I'll tap this for 6, so it can make quite a few. And again, being able to have those pilots crew things that are basically like crew 3, that's quite nice. Or, just have 2 of them, do crew 6. There's not really anything too much above that, I don't think, actually, when it comes to crew. So it's very good. Next up, Fearless Swashbuckler. So this is a card that, it's cool. I mean, it's like a swordfish that's a swashbuckler. That's very cool. Swordfish like street sharks. Street sharks! 3/3 fish pirate with haste for 3 mana in Is It? Vehicles you control have haste, that's cool. So if you can have a vehicle deck, being able to hastily swing them, that's nice. Whenever you attack, if a pirate and a vehicle attack this combat, draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards. So this is something that, it is a cool concept. I do like this card, and of course it's very good in vehicle decks, or like if you've got like pirates, essentially. I say very good in vehicle decks that also happen to have pirates. So like a combination of both of you have that, great. If not, you're maybe counting on this being your pirate to attack, which is fine. It doesn't really have any evasion though, so yeah. That being said, this was one of the teasers for tomorrow that I was pretty excited about. I was hoping that it was actually like on a actual commander itself. Like whenever you attack, if a pirate vehicle attack this combat, you get this, like a huge effect. Like it's nice. It's not on a commander though, but that's a nice effect. Draw 3, discard 2, so that's a good amount of looting there. Next up, we've got Full Throttle. This card is going to be nowhere near budget friendly, unfortunately. Goodness gracious. Sorcery for 6 mana in red. At the beginning, after this main phase, don't know why I said at the beginning, I just skipped a line there. After this main phase, there are 2 initial combat phases. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attack this turn. Okay, so this is just basically you get 2 extra combats, which of course, because there are certain types of decks out there, I mean a good amount of them these days, especially some very popular commanders like Ishin, extra combats are in high demand. So those cards, even like the most simplest ones, like Relentless Assault, I think it's Relentless Assault, Aggravated and Relentless, I think it's Relentless. That one, even though it's very simple, like 4 mana, extra combat, cool, is now pretty expensive these days. So yeah, this giving you 2 extra combats is probably gonna be pretty expensive as well because yeah, Ishin with all the combat triggers, or you know, just kind of like an aggressive strategy that likes to get extra combats, or you know, a strategy where you're like hitting an opponent, you get like a trigger off of that as well. There's a lot of different types of strategies that like extra combats, and 6 mana for 2 extra combats is pretty huge. So yeah, especially since there's a lot of extra combat spells out there that cost 5 that might give you like a little bit extra, but like still, yeah, this is hey, take 2 extra for 6. That's gross. Gonna be very expensive, I think. Next up, though, Marauding Mako, a 1/1 shark pirate that's really happy. Look at that smile. Oh gosh, all those teeth. For a single red mana, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many counters on this creature and you can cycle it away. So yeah, I mean, this is great for a cycling deck, or for a discard deck, though keep in mind that, you know what, it does count every single card discarded, again, the way that it's worded. Put that many counters on this creature. So if you have, say, I don't know, like a wheel effect, you know, cool, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I discard 7 cards or whatever it is, 7 counters on this. This can hit really hard, really quickly. It is for specific types of strategies out there. And again, if you have a wheel strategy out there, are you really looking to just like throw a little 1/1 for 1 down? Maybe. I mean, it could be a finisher for you. It doesn't really have like any evasion, of course, essentially, but like, yeah, if you can wheel quite quickly, which there are certain commander decks out there that definitely can, yeah, you're going to be getting this thing absolutely massive in absolutely no time. And if you don't need it, you have the option to cycle it away, which is nice. So again, just cycling decks in general, definitely considering it. Discard decks as well, and yeah, wheel decks too. Next up, Market Back Walker. I mean, we've got, this is our 3rd Walker. We've got a Hanger Back. There's that other one that's like also XX. I don't know. 0/0 construct costing XX. Enters with X counters on it. Pay 4. Put a counter on it. And when this creature dies, draw a card for each counter on it. So, okay, it's not like combo-rific, like, you know, Hangerback, there we go. Walking Ballista, that's the one I was thinking of. It's not called Walker, but it's basically the same thing. So, essentially, this is, yeah, a great way to just make a giant creature that you can just build more counters on. If you have a counter strategy already or a proliferate strategy, you can keep building those counters again and again and again and again, and then just wait till it pops, essentially, and all of a sudden you draw a ton of cards. So it's kind of like a mass draw spell in the waiting, but you do kind of either need like a big mana deck, like an X spell tribal deck. You need like a, again, proliferate deck or a counter strategy to really make the most of this. I'm sure an artifact strategy could just utilize it as well, or maybe a very specific commander that happens to work with, you know, activated abilities and, you know, maybe reducing those costs or whatnot, which there are some of those things out there, or just, you know, mass mana producing commanders. It's a very interesting card for sure. Next up, though, Voyager Glide Car. Is this the new Looter Scooter? A 2/3 vehicle for a single white mana. Enter scry 1. It has crew 1, tap 3 untapped, other untapped creatures, I should say, you control. Until end of turn, it becomes an artifact creature, gains flying, put a counter on it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the next Looter Scooter. I mean, obviously, I don't play Standard. That being said, yeah, I mean, for it being a vehicle, it's a pretty interesting vehicle, just being a low-to-the-ground vehicle. There's only so many of those, number 1. Number 2, yeah, just being able to scry 1 right away off of it. That is some nice card selection for you right away. The crew cost is very reasonable, obviously, and if you do have a good amount of creatures, you can, of course, just crew this up, essentially, in that way. And then, yeah, make it actually keep getting more and more counters. So there could be some counter synergies there, too. I'd say mostly in Commander, this is probably for, well, vehicle strategies in general, or strategies that really care about scrying, I guess. Or, like, you know, if you have, like, an ETB deck, you could just, like, take advantage of this potentially, but that's a bit more specific. Next up, though, Samut the Driving Force, the character that has returned in a big way. 4/5 Human Warrior Cleric for 6 mana in Naya. First Strike, Vigilance, and hey, start your engines. So again, if you have no speed, it starts at 1 and increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Max speed is 4. I mean, it's tough to get to the max speed pretty quickly because, well, this does cost 6. And yeah, that would be like, you know, let's say that you get this out on turn. I mean, if you're ramping properly, maybe like turn 4 or 5. And then you're like, okay, it's turn 4 or 5. Now I'm at max speed 1. All right. Or not max speed. I'm at regular speed 1, whatever it's called. And then, okay, next turn. I mean, well, maybe I'll get a combat image through. Okay, this turn. There we go. All right, next turn. maybe by the time it's like turn 8 or 9, you could probably reasonably assume that you're at max speed, which luckily with this one, you don't need to have like a max speed to get a value out of it though, which is good. That being said, of course, another way around that though is actually having other cards in the deck that give you that, max speed, these start your engines. You can start things off earlier than that, which is what I would be recommending with this commander most definitely. Other cards from this set that specifically help you start your engines, especially some of the easy ones that are like on lands essentially. So being able to get those out early, get that started, get that process going so that even by the time you get your commander out, you might be able to be at 4 already, which would be massive and huge. And that's kind of where the actual power potential of this commander is. Not that I'm saying that, it's limited in that one, but I'm glad that it doesn't have like a max speed requirement for an ability because its ability switch I should have gotten to earlier, but here we go. Other creatures you control at plus X plus 0, where X is your speed. Non-creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is your speed. This can be a very powerful commander again once you get things going. At least there is a benefit right away though, okay? When this comes down, you're at 1 on that speed, so your creatures get plus 1/0, which is, it's okay. I mean, not for a 6-mana commander, but it's okay. And then also reducing the cost of your non-creature spells, that's huge, especially since your max of that is 4. My goodness. So do keep that in mind. And of course, again, you are able to increase if you hit an opponent on that turn, so you can go up to 2, and the plus 2/0, and max plus 4/0, once you get there, is going to be really, really, really nice. So this is a commander that does require some build around. I am kind of in the waiting to see like what other like start your engines cards are going to be out there, because here's the thing again, like when it comes to a commander, it's very specific about what it wants to do. Again, this is like, okay, kind of built around that mechanic that start your engines. It's not a low to the ground commander. It's something that takes a little bit of time to build up. You probably want to include other cards that start your engines in this. That being said, you don't just want to include like a bunch of draft chaff that does nothing essentially. So you don't want just like, oh, okay, a bunch of cards that just say start your engines and then nothing else that really kind of, works with this. You want to make sure that you are actually building in a thoughtful manner. That being said, it is not a bad commander at all when it comes to the power potential of it, especially when we get more of those cards coming out. If we've got those start your engine cards coming, and I'm sure we're going to get some really good ones, then yes, we throw those in the deck. Hopefully we got some ways. And of course you can include some like tutors. I'm sure there's good, land tutors at the very least, right? If you get like a land tutor that goes and gets like any land, like a crop rotation, you get one of those lands that start your engines right when it comes into play, great, get things going. You probably have to build around something like that. But yeah, if you can get your commander out and be at max speed right then and there, my goodness, this is a force to be reckoned with, because your non-creature spells cost 4 less to cast, which is huge. And again, you pump your team a ton. There's plenty of ways to take advantage of that too. Let's jump into those. Okay, so outside of those specific like start your engine cards and like tutor cards I already talked about, like crop rotation or just like creature tutors in general, Gilded Goose. Yeah, this is a card that again, if you're building with this commander, you can really take advantage of some low-to-the-ground Mandorks. I mean, Birds of Paradise, the more expensive version of this, obviously, but like Gilded Goose, there you go. It's a good card. 0/2 bird with flying for a single green mana. Enters the battlefield, make a food token. You can also pay to make food tokens and tap to sacrifice a food. Add 1 mana of any color. So again, a mana dork that can help you speed things up, while also just being an evasive creature that might not have any power to start. But of course, you get your commander in play, and all of a sudden, this has 4 power. And of course, if you've got other ways to pump as well, a way to force that life loss, which is lovely. Lizard Blades, a 1/1 equipment lizard for 2 mana. Double strike, equip creature as double strike. Double strike is a massive thing with this commander because again, yeah, your commander does not help out with that toughness, but this does when it comes to actually giving you that, first strike hit out of the double strike, which is nice, helps protect in combat. And of course, it basically doubles up the effectiveness of your commander's doubling the power essentially that's giving you. So again, if your commander is at that max speed and you've got +4/+0, now all of a sudden it's +8/+0, and that can be absolutely massive again for whatever creature this is equipped to, or again, this creature itself. Then we've got Moria Marauder. A 1/1 double strike as well. Whenever a goblin or orc you control deals combat to a player, exile the top card of your library. Play a card this turn. Just another good low to the ground creature. Again, double strike can really help you out. Of course, if you got other ways to kind of help get creatures through, that can help out a ton. Swiftblade Vindicator. This one does all the things. A 1/1 with double strike, vigilance, and trample. So again, once your commander is at that max speed, this little 2 mana creature is all of a sudden going to be like, oh, okay, I swing, and I can also stay back in combat. I'm hitting for 8 with double strike. Yeah, gross. And trampling things over too. Thermal Alchemist, other kind of like group slug type effects could definitely help you out as well. If you're, depends on what way you want to lean. You could lean like the flying men type strategy, a lot of low to the ground evasive creatures. Most definitely, you could lean in double strike. you could lean into other ways to get creatures through, or you can just lean in some ping effects to ensure that you are getting that life loss of opponents on your turn, which is going to be huge. Again, you want to make sure you get to max speed, especially if you, again, play one of those lands, say, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, maybe I don't have any creatures to get through, but maybe you got some effects like this. Tap, deal 1 damage to each opponent. So yeah, very simple, very effective, a way to increase your speed. On top of that, whenever you're casting in sorceries, you untap it, although there's a lot of other group sluggy type effects too. Next up, Strike Force, a 1/3 bird knight with flying, double strike, and vigilance. Again, keyword soup creatures can be very good. This kind of a strategy, especially when they do have double strike, and yeah, flying, any kind of evasion can be great for you as well. So make sure you're considering those. Witty Roast Master, you get another kind of like group sluggy type effect-ish. Another creature is battlefield to control, 1 damage to each opponent. So again, like impact tremors type card, basically. Yeah, a very easy way to, if you've got enough creatures in the deck, ensure that you are keeping up the pressure on your opponents and that you are getting that damage on them so that you do get that speed increase. Aetherdrift, Lunarch Marshal. I'm not going to say it's an auto-include, but it's a really big include for you. 3/3 Human Soldier for 4 mana in white. At the beginning of each combat, creature control gain. Here we go. First strike until end of turn, if you control a creature first strike. The same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. And if you buy right now, we throw in some steak knives or whatever it's called. It's not an infomercial, but yeah, Aetherdrift has so much text on it essentially. Basically, you just spread out your keywords. If you have something that has a keyword, everything else gets it, essentially. So again, your commander, which has 3 keywords, spread those out. That's amazing. And on top of that, if your other creatures have double strike, yeah, spread that out as well. Fiendish Duo, another card that does have a keyword with first strike, which is nice. 5/5 Devil for 6 mana in red. If a source would deal damage to an opponent, it deals double that damage to that player instead. So again, we talked about kind of going hard into like double strike effects. If you go about that way, maybe also include some damage doubling effects in one on a creature like this. I mean, this is a 5/5, right? Let's say we're at max speed and our commander is dishing out that, double strike, or we have double strike, from Aetherdrift, I should say. If this has double strike plus the +4, but it is an absurd amount of damage. I mean, even if not, right, you are getting 9 times 2, 18 right there. If you have double strike as well, it's what, 36? So yeah, things can really add up quickly once you have kind of all these keyword jumble things happening, essentially. And when it comes to your commander, just pumping this in general. Berserker's Onslaught, again, keyword jumble, here we go. Attacking creature control double strike. There are plenty of ways to do this in red, and actually in white as well. True Conviction, double strike, and lifelink a bit more expensive for this one, mana value-wise and also price-wise too. That being said, yeah, the life gain is quite nice from this, but being able to, again, essentially give double strike, that makes your commander's pump effect even more impactful. Speaking of impact, though, again, I just talked about some really high converted mana cost cards, but again, if your commander is in play, they cost a lot less. Again, if you're at max speed, those last ones we just talked about cost 2 and 3 respectively. This one would just cost 1 mana, a single green mana, because again, your commander reduces that non-creature cost essentially by 4 with that max speed. Instant, choose 1, draw cards, equally greatest power among non-human creatures you control. Again, you're going to have a lot of non-humans in this deck, and yeah, just pay a single mana essentially to just draw a ton of cards, again, thanks to your commander's pump. On top of that, non-human creatures you control get +3 until end of turn is another option, so another good way to potentially pump your team. Traverse the Outlands, yet another 5 mana spell that can cost just a single mana, which is crazy. Search life to X basic land cards, Rexy, Grace, Power among creatures you control. Those cards on the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. Again, that can be a ton of damage, a ton of power essentially. So again, a 1 mana card, go get like 8 lands or something like that. Brass's Bounty, yet another way to ramp, but temporarily. For each land you control, create treasure token. Again, this normally costs 7. With your commander, it can cost as little as just 3 mana. And again, picture that, just 3 mana makes 7 treasures. Lovely. Or how about, oops, scroll too far. Azuri's Predation. There we go. Sorcery for 8 mana in total. For each creature opponents control, create a 4/4 green Phyrexian Beast creature token. Each of those tokens fights 8 of one of those creatures. Basically, a one-sided board wipe in a way where you're like, oh, okay, all your creatures, right? You got all your creatures? All right, I'm going to spend just 4 mana on this because my commander reduces this by 4. I'm going to make a 4/4 for every single one of those creatures you have, but also they're going to be 8/4s because my commander is pumping them as well. So all of a sudden, they fight and basically wipe out your armies. A good amount of my beasts will probably survive, and they're left over to take you out too. So have fun. Again, I do think that the key to this commander is kind of getting that speed started early, the max speed thing started early. So right now, again, we've seen some lands with it, essentially. Hopefully, we get some more better cards with it as well that can actually initiate that early that you actually want to include in the deck. But at the very least, just like get a bunch of land tutors like Fraught Rotation and go get some of those lands to get that started right away. Get some low-to-the-ground evasive creatures that you just get out and play and get things going with this commander so you can do some crazy awesome things like casting a 4 mana Azuri's Predation. And with that, this episode is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts are on this episode. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.